so we had like this crazy stacked year, and I walked into the Spider-Verse thinking like, okay, the art style like looks cool. I don't know what to expect, but I know I get it. Like how did it hit you with the artwork, with the soundtrack, with the performances? Like what stuck out to you? I'll go to Lex first.
So after all those movies that came out that year, it was a lot. And Sony doesn't have the best track record with Spider-Man movies by themselves. So it was an animated movie. My son is in the age where he's watching them and things like that. So I was like, okay, well, it's an animated movie. I can take him to see that, and I like Spider-Man, so it can't be that bad. I was absolutely blown away with everything about it, the art style, the soundtrack, I mean everything, the flow of it. And I forgot I was with my family. I was watching it like I was the kid watching the movie. So I was completely blown away, and I still am to this. I watched it today just to to brush up on it, and I was still blown away by it.
Yeah, it's oh god, it's such a beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Zeph?
You know, it's funny because mostly when animated movies come out and whatnot, I'm usually like, oh, okay, that looks good. I'm not gonna see it on the first night, but
Mm-hmm.
it looks. I'm gonna see it eventually. Unlike and feel like Infinity War that came out that year, like yeah, I'm seeing that's a definite
Mm-hmm.
first night movie ticket. But when I sat down and watched it, it was just what really got me was the art style and
Mm-hmm.
how they really took the time to I guess to like different for lack of a better word, they like differentiate between like the dimensions and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and how like when stuff was like distorting, you could see like there was different styles and how like each Spider-Man had their own thing to them. And it was really like the artwork for me the most. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like the performances were really good, and the
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. But for me, the biggest thing was just like the movie looked like a comic book.
Yeah, it felt like a comic
Like
book all
Yeah.
the way through.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like like how you see them like those movement. I don't know what you call them, like those movement comics you see on YouTube sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Mhm.
actors over them and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's like they took that and they just went the next step and made it
Mm-hmm.
into like this animation thing. And I just absolutely that's what I love the most about it is just
For
how it
sure.
looked. Just yeah.
Yeah, and how about you, Juju?
Man, dude, like I'm gonna be honest. Like when I heard that they were gonna do a Spider-Verse movie, I was like so skeptical. I was really skeptical because this was like right around the time when the Sony leaks happened and they revealed that they were also like planning to do. It was like right after Andrew Garfield got fired, and they revealed they were also doing like an Aunt May spinoff where she's a secret agent or some crap. And I was just kind of like, okay, so now you're doing Spider-Verse. You guys are totally gonna ruin it because, like Wednesday said, you ain't got. They didn't have the best track record since Spider-Man 2. So I was really apprehensive when I heard about it. But once I saw a couple of the trailers, I was kind of thinking to myself like, okay, this is going to be something really special, like really special. And there was a moment in the movie where I just said to myself like, this is different than any other superhero movie, any movie that we've ever seen. And it wasn't just the opening where you're running through like the Spider-Man backstory and they're embracing like the ugly popsicles and the Spider-Man
Mm-hmm.
stories and the origin and all those type of things. It was the moment where we first get introduced to Miles, and he's walking from his house and he's going to school, and he's talking to his friends, and it was just this moment where like you're saying to yourself like, they're embracing Miles
Mm-hmm.
Morales as a character. They're embracing like his culture. They're embracing his mythos, his backstory. They're truly
Yeah.
setting him apart from not only every other superhero that we know, but from Peter Parker in general. And the moment that like really made me go like, oh yeah, I'm in. Like you got me. Like if the opening didn't get me, you got me. It was when Biggie starts playing. It's
Mm-hmm.
the moment you
Yeah,
hear that,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh my, I'm hearing Biggie in an animated tale about an Afro Latino like Spider-Man while he's like slapping stickers and like speaking Spanish. He's giving people dap. Like I'm just over here thinking to myself, like, this almost embraced the culture more so than Black Panther did,
Mm-hmm.
you
mhm.
know?
Yeah,
Because
as far as being relatable to people, like
exactly.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I saw myself in
Mm-hmm.
that. you know. So
Yeah.
that was when I knew that it was going to be special, because in that moment you saw the sound, you saw the you got a taste of the soundtrack, you got a taste of the Miles Morales character, you got a taste of like who he was like as a person with his family dynamics and everything. And I was just kind of like, oh, even before he even touches a suit, like I'm with it. Like I'm with it.
Yeah, it did a real good job of setting, like you said, setting the tone just out the gate, giving you all that backstory without giving you a lot of backstory. You definitely got the vibe that it wasn't just a Peter Parker clone.
Exactly.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
It kind of like I mean, for me, again, I almost always see all these opening night. Didn't see this one opening night, but like more often than not, I even tell my wife, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing the movie opening night. I hope you can come too, but if you can't, like, you know how. But this one was like, okay, I'll wait. And yeah, just like you said, I mean, as soon as it starts and we get the first, the Peter Parker intro, and we see him, disco dancing on the street. I was and what it showed the comics code too. Like there's just a bunch of little things. So it's like, okay. So it gave me like, it set the tone of like, okay, we're coming in this lighthearted. This is not going to be like a very heavily serious thing. So that's cool. That also gave me time to adjust to the art style. It was beautiful, but there was some of the shifting in the background that my eyes just weren't used to. I mean, I'm still shocked that they invented a new way of just playing movies. You know what I mean? Like,
Took a minute to get used to, for sure.
But then, like you said, as soon as they introduced Miles, because my other worry is that it's, even from watching the first trailers, is I want to see a black character up there that is relatable to me, and he's not just like, I'm black, everybody, and like, I'm Black Spider-Man. Like,
I'm black,
you know what I mean?
y'all. I'm black, y'all.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because when Miles first came out in the comics, I was it was cool. Hey, cool, Black Spider-Man. I'm with it. But I think one thing that Brian Michael Bendis was missing at the time was the culture.
Yeah,
like we saw Miles and whatnot, and he's black, and that's cool. But that's not, his skin color is just not enough. I want to see him.
That was about it.
Do black things. Like I want to see him go to the barbershop.
Oh my gosh, that's important. That's important.
Exactly. See Miles go to the barbershop, get lined up to school or something. Like, like I want to see him, do what we do every day. And I think that's what Into the Spider-Verse did really, really well, especially like what Juju said within the first like few minutes of the movie. They plant us right there in Brooklyn, where Miles is, and you just embrace the culture, and you see him going around talking to his friends, speaking Spanish to his mom. It's like already like, yo, this is gonna be dope. Like,
yeah, I mean, my wife is Mexican, so if we have a kid, we're naming him Miles.
Nice.
I got her on board.
Nice.
Got her on board.
Nice.
But
all I
you
gotta
know
do
what?
is just find a spider.
You guys are in business. You guys are in business. Miles' mom knows he's Spider-Man in the comics, so that could definitely work. I was just gonna say, like, agreeing with like Zeph, man. It's just seeing Spider-Man do black things is like so important. Like, people just see that probably as like a gimmick, but to be honest, like when you see somebody doing the things that you do on the page or up on screen, like it means a lot. Like I feel like when it comes to Into the Spider-Verse was the first one to truly embrace Miles's like ethnic identity, right? And like it wasn't, and like I don't know if you guys have played the Spider-Man Miles Morales game yet, but
oh yeah,
dude, I've already beat that shit like twice. But it's amazing. But even that, like they really like went full tilt into like his love for music, like the shoes that he wears. Like obviously, in the movie he's wearing like Jordans with the shoes untied. That's a huge part of Black culture, like just seeing that. And then you play the game. Obviously they changed it to Adidas because copyright reasons, but he still has like that love for music and beats and like hip hop, and like he there's even a moment where like if you're walking around in his house, you can check the mirror where he's checking out his lineup, where he's like, yeah,
his lineup was fresh in that game, though.
Like when they first showed him,
unrealistically fresh, man.
It was real. When they first showed that teaser trailer, I said, "Wow, dude, that dude got a fresh cut." And to actually like have a moment set aside in the game to have him go, yeah, I think the new cut looks nice. I'm like, yo, that is so like
Exactly.
I needed a little bit more progression because no one's haircut looks like that besides the first day. Then immediately the next day it starts growing back in.
man, that's when you start putting a
Exactly.
wave. If they would have had Miles in a wave cap, super.
Oh, that would have been dude.
Make
The next skin is Miles in a do-rag with the mask on. I don't care. I gotta see.
I need that.
But like you said, it could be a gimmick sometimes. Sometimes it is a gimmick, and then it feels
Yeah.
forced, and you can tell it's a gimmick. But in the movie, they did it so well, and I feel like
Natural.
since it was so well received, they turned it up in the comics, they turned it up in the game, and then just all around his character is more well received because it feels more authentic.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right. So jump straight into the movie. So I like to just go through each of the acts, and just what jumps out at you guys. So the first act, and by the way, I could be off on these with what I'm considering each act, but I'm calling the first act, the introduction and everything, all the way through him meeting, Peter B. Parker. I consider the end of the first act when they're trying to escape the police and they fall down and New York is just walking over him in the street and he's like, "Thank you, New York." Yeah. So that whole intro part, we got to see that universe's original Spider-Man. We got introduced to Miles, his family, him going to the new school. We got to see the most terrifying goblin I've ever seen in my goddamn life. But yeah,
scary.
I'll go to Zeph first. What jumps out at you in the first act of the film?
I guess it's how I don't want to say I'm a accuracy whore, but I do kind of like it when I could just when the comic, I see the comic on screen, like panel for panel. Sometimes so it was just for me it was the Spider-Man during the Goblin fight. I was like, oh snap, that's Ultimate Goblin. Like, okay,
Yeah,
and whatnot. That's Ultimate Goblin and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if y'all saw this. It was like a small Easter egg, but like when they were doing like the bringing in the universes and Spider-Man's head was shoved into the collider and whatnot. On the computer screen and saying all the Earths, and it said Earth 1610. I'm like, okay, so this is their version of the Ultimate Universe. So I kind of like how they I like that Ultimate Universe better than the one than the one that's that's on the panel. But yeah, that was one of the big things that kind of jumped out at me at first. Was just how well they translated that to film. Because the MCU movies, they take a lot from the Ultimate Universe and whatnot. But it's like a mixed match of things.
Right.
But that right there was, I think, it's even within the first act of the movie, like you get like, okay, yeah, this is a really great homage to that universe. So
you're like, their shit.
Like these people know, these people did their research. Like, yeah,
you could tell they have a lot of love for the franchise and for everything in it, and they love it for the right reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so important when creating these like when adapting like comic books, is like showing that you love the property enough to like really put the thought into like what characters you use, the appearances and that type of stuff. Like it's so important.
I mean, one of the most horrifying things I can remember is seeing when I was little on Fox before X-Men 3 came out. They was doing like a making of thing, and there was people sitting in the room. They had a list of superpowers and they had a bunch of photos of characters, and they were just mix and matching what they liked. They're like, "Oh, this looks cool. We'll give them this."
I wish you wouldn't have told me that. That's horrible.
I remember I was like 10 years old. Like,
man,
what is wrong with you?
That's awful.
But how about you, Juju? First act, what jumps out?
The thing that like really got me in the first act was like, and this was like right in the height when I was kind of like rewatching the movie like over and over, because my daughter's starting to be in love with it. She's 3, so like now she's like, "Daddy, Spider-Man," and we watch Spider-Man all the time, which I'm not mad at. And it was the opening monologue. Like the opening monologue itself is like just a beautiful piece of like, it's a celebration of who Spider-Man is, like just as a character, not just like Peter Parker, but like the mantle. And a couple things is like, one, they showed Uncle Ben for like 2 seconds, which is great because I've been arguing that what the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man is missing is that Uncle Ben figure, like basically his reason for being Spider-Man, that innate ability to be like, I need to do this because it's my responsibility, no matter how like what I want. So showing Uncle Ben even for 2 seconds, because a lot of people like to argue and say like, oh, we don't want to see Uncle Ben's whole origin story. I'm like, you don't have to. All you have to do is just have him here for 2 seconds. So the fact that they were able to just kind of like give that, I was very happy with that. But the thing that like really jumped out to me was just seeing like the composition of scenes when you see him saying like, oh yeah, so I jumped off a building, I did this, I did that, like I've saved New York, I did that. But then you start like, I really start to like really look closely at it, and it looks like that the perfect Peter is what I like to call him, the blonde hair, blue eyes. It seemed like he was running through all those events in his mind while fighting Green Goblin during the Collider fight. Because if you notice, like they're not only showing like iconic Spider-Man moments from the past, but they're also like putting in scenes of the current fight where he's fighting Green Goblin during the Collider. Even a scene that you see when the Collider explodes initially, you see that before, Miles sees it. So it really made me think to myself, like, is this Peter Parker's like life flashing before his eyes? Is this something that he's like telling himself to kind of like psych himself up, reminding himself about being Uncle Ben, reminding himself that there's only one Spider-Man and that he'll always get back up? And that just kind of added like another layer of sadness, while at the same time like inspiration, because you're thinking to yourself like, here's this guy who's about to face death. He knows he's probably about to face death. But even during that, he's reminding himself like he's Spider-Man. He has to get the job done. And that was just one of those things that just kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my God. And you really have to pay attention to like really like catch that.
Especially on rewatches where you see how many things that show up later in the movie were all in it from the get-go. Like, I mean, you briefly see Genki and Gwen walk across the street in front of the car, like briefly, but like it all lines up beautifully. But what are your thoughts, Lex?
In the first act, so Miles steals the show straight out the gate. But the thing that really stuck out, and after rewatching it more and more times, the thing that I appreciate the most in that first act is Peter B. Parker. For me, a lot of people argue online, which I know all of you have been a part of this conversation, is who the best Peter Parker is, whether it's Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland. Nobody ever talks about this Jake Johnson version because obviously it's animated. But to me, he is my perfect Peter Parker. He's throughout the whole movie, but he shows that he's smart. He shows that even you can kind of feel, he doesn't ever show his self-doubt, but you can feel it through his jokes. And he's not the perfect Peter Parker, which doesn't really exist. And that analogy to me was perfect. And so he stuck out. And I just loved that character throughout the whole movie. Jake Johnson killed it.
That's why I say that. It's because with Jake Johnson version, it's now become like Spider-Man now has his own like thing where what we do with the Joker. Where it's like when you discuss who's the best Joker, you don't just discuss the best live action Joker.
Exactly.
You gotta throw Mark Hamill in there as well.
Exactly.
So now you got to throw Jake Johnson in there. Even Yuri Rowenthal, I think, from the Spider-Man games, you got to throw him in there as well.
For sure.
Because they got to be in the conversation.
Got to be, yeah.
Exactly. So
I mean, that's the first video game that made me cry.
That's a rough game, man. It pulls at your heartstrings for sure.
They made me love Doc Ock.
Oh
How?
my God.
How do you do that? Like, the first time you see him, I already know what's going to happen.
Evil. Bad guy.
You know how the game's going to end, and it still catches you off guard.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
The moment he says, "You were everything I wanted to be," I'm like, oh my God.
I was laughing a little bit because he was saying it while just absolutely knocking the wind out of him.
Just messing him up
on the side of a building. I was like, this is kind of heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's kind of
you are my hero. Bash his face.
Right.
Catch these hands. My
hero. Oh man. No, I mean for me in this first act, again, like the music really like first of all, having Post Malone be, when we were introduced to Miles, and you're just like, and you're sitting there and you're grooving too with them. And I don't know, I just love that scene. But during the fight where you keep having, you know, this heroic theme, but then like this, like, I don't even know how they did it, because the theme is heroic, where you think there's a possibility Peter's going to win this fight, and then the music kind of levels out into like sinister, and it keeps playing with that, going back and forth, and then you get the Prowler who jumps in there, and then his theme starts, which it's played down during this scene, obviously, because, you know, Peter has a chance of winning, but when that theme comes back, when Miles gets chased, it's so much scarier.
Oh my god, Prowler is terrifying.
That's a great scene. Yeah.
Great scene.
But yeah, I mean, you guys hit all the great stuff. Also, we had the cinematography, which is weird for a digital movie like this, but it was just beautiful and on point throughout this entire thing. But just like little tiny film touches where we're following Miles through his own streets, where he's the man. Everyone knows him. He's high-fiving everyone, talking to everyone. Everyone's talking to him. They miss him, all this stuff. But he's going to this other school now to kind of elevate himself, you know, try and do better for himself, which is basically the heart of the movie. Like, you can be a big fish in a small pond, or you can jump in the ocean and, you know, try to do your thing. As he's walking through his school, the camera follows him the same way, but he knows nobody, and it feels kind of empty in that scene. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I found that touching, you know.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The camera does move in the same exact way as like when he's in like his hometown, like, well, I guess like his block, and then now he's in like this unfamiliar area, and then like, damn, you just fucked me up with that one. Because like I'm thinking of the scene where, like, you know, he's like, you know, dapping this guy, like, what are you talking about? I slept like a baby last night. And then like it's the same exact framing where like the girl goes, hey, and he goes, hey, and she goes, your shoes untied, and just keeps walking. And I'm like, oh wow. It just messed me up. Like, okay.
No, it's so good. And the introduction to his uncle too.
Oh yeah.
But
Ali, baby.
So cool.
God.
So
Yeah, by the way, going, hey, only works if you sound like and look like Mahershala Ali.
Yeah,
And I love that. I love
Exactly.
I love that they also showed that, because when he did it, it didn't sound like at all.
Right.
he did it like 3 times, and each time I was just kind of like, wow, that kind of worked.
It's getting hot in here for me. I'm at home.
I didn't see it with my wife, but I went and tried it on my wife. Like, she was just sitting on the couch, and I tried to play it as cool as possible, and I put my hand on her shoulder, and I was just kind of like, hey, and she goes like, what? Nothing.
What do you want? Never mind. All right, so jumping into Act 2. So kind of like when he first has the conversation. Well, first, where Miles interrogates Peter B. Parker is kind of where it starts. But, you know, kind of that all the way through to Uncle Aaron's eventual death. So it's a big section. We get introduced to a lot of people, but it really kind of caps off there. So this one, I'll go to Juju first.
Yeah, so that is a big section. There's a lot that happens into it, but I think like one of the more underrated things that a lot of people don't talk about is Spider-Gwen's story. Like it's Spider-Gwen like entering into the picture, and it's almost like because this is the first time after we meet Peter B. Parker that we see another Spider person who's also like dealing with the same struggles that all Spider-Man deal with, whereas like they all suffer tremendous loss, but they all still find the way to get back up and like get the job done. Like Gwen obviously doesn't want to have any friends. She has like this kind of wall up, this detachment. She just wants to kind of like do her thing and like get home as soon as possible. And it's just like an underrated arc in the movie, especially when you consider they're balancing like Miles's arc, and you get the second biggest arc to Peter B. Parker, and then you have her arc where like, you know, she's apprehensive and like she wants to encourage Miles while at the same time like keeping arm's distance from him. And I found like, you know, when you read the comics and that relationship progresses in like such a way, because like, you know, they're together in the comics, like, you know, that they're kind of hinting at something deeper in the future while not looking too far ahead to distract away from like what's happening right now. So like when it comes to just Spider-Gwen and the introduction to the other Spider people, there is like it truly like shows what Spider-Man is like all about. Like, you know, you may be from a universe that's purple and pink, I don't know, with Spider-Gwen, or you might be an animal, like, you know, you're a pig or black and white or like an anime character. It's like everybody is here to do a job. And yeah, like I forgot, I'm losing my train of thought on this one, but it's just, I just like the introduction of Spider-Gwen because like that's such a big player that's gonna play like because I think they're also thinking about doing a Spider-Verse story with just like all the female Spider people.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was just like really impressed with like the way they kind of like built her out in her small sections that she's had.
Yeah, they also did such a great job of, you know, those of us who read comics are already familiar with these characters, but they give a full introduction on them so that even if you haven't, you still understand the core of the character. But they do it they do it with a bunch of exposition, but it's not too much exposition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it was the perfect introduction to all of those characters, and they won't be able to do that in any live action movie like that. And
no, there's just no way.
That comic book slap on the screen and transition into like a quick
perfect.
30-second.
Yeah,
can't beat that.
I was smiling ear to ear in the theater. I was like, this is the perfect background story. Like you have 5 new characters, and now we know everything we need to know about them, and it all happens
exactly.
I feel like they created a new genre with this film and did a bunch of stuff that could only exist inside of this medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But your thoughts, Lex, the second act?
So this is a big act. Besides the introduction of all the characters, that's really my main thing that I really loved about it. We get to see Doc Ock in this universe, and for some reason that scene just blew me away. Because I like funny Spider-Man. That's probably my favorite characteristic about the character is how he's funny, even though it's masking his fear, you know. And the scene with, first of all, the unveiling of Doc Ock, she was cool, and that too completely caught me off guard. You know, it's one of those things that you know what's going to happen, but it still catches you off guard. And then just the way their interaction was at the same time with Miles being there, and like I said earlier, Peter B. Parker's showing that he's smart. He's dealing with Doc Ock and walking Miles through getting through the computer. So it's like, it's just a perfect Spider-Man moment for me. And that was probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie.
And that ultra confidence in this Spider-Man just because of experience.
Yeah,
where the whole thing is just like, yeah, it's always a thing. It's always a key or a code or whatever. It's just a goober.
And you feel the BS from him though too. You know, like he's saying all these things, but you could feel at any minute like it could backfire, and he would be like, "Yeah, I don't know. It just sometimes doesn't work."
One of my favorite things is just like I'll hack into the computer and look for the important stuff. I'll know it when I see it. It's just
like there's like a tiny moment in that where he's all like, "Oh yeah, I'll get the head guy and I'll get him to tell me." And then Miles says, "Actually, the head person is that woman that we saw in class." He goes, "Oh, part 2. I rediscovered my personal biases."
And then like we were talking about it feeling like a comic moment. It's a very small moment when they're running out of the building and he throws the bagel at the dude's head and this little boop pops up. For me, it was like, oh man, that's perfect. It feels like a comic book to me. And so
that's my favorite.
I love little things like that.
I mean, I gotta say my favorite one is the one that you pointed out, Juju, in your video about the coffee.
Oh yeah, it's the lady with the coffee. Yeah, so so there's like the scene where like basically like, you know, everybody when they get caught by all the scientists who are having like breakfast or lunch or whatever, and they all like, you know, whip out their guns. Like, you know, like I noticed that everyone, if you pause that scene, it's hilarious within itself because you have like literally everyone doing a different pose with a different gun. Like one dude even like slides out on the floor like he's in Mr. and Mrs. Smith or some shit. And then you have like this woman who literally like rolls her eyes because like she hasn't had her coffee yet. So I like rewound it just like a tad bit when Spider-Man first walks into the room. You could just see her just like tired as shit, like pouring her coffee into the thing. So then when you see everyone whips out their Glock, you just see her just kind of go, shit. You guys got that. The fact they took the time to animate that, like that it was perfect. It was a perfect moment.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Zeph? Second act?
Second act. Okay, so for me, I'm a big sucker for when characters have to learn their powers, like that entire arc they go through. and whatnot. So it's just like parts when when they're escaping the facility and whatnot, and Miles is learning how to swing. Like that's just that's fan service. Like and then you finally getting in, and there's like, okay, thwip. I'm like, okay, yeah. Like you're you're natural. Yeah, like stuff like that. I love it. And then to the turning point when Uncle Aaron dies and whatnot. And it's like, oh shoot, this is his his Uncle Ben moment. This is what's gonna give him over.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks, but that's what's gonna give him over that, over that initial hump, so he can, do what needs to be done. But yeah, superheroes learning their powers. I'm a really big sucker for that, especially when he was like going invisible.
Yeah.
Accident. Yeah.
on accident, or he was stuck on the those octagon lights. He's like, relax. He's like, how do you relax? I'm like, okay. And he just starts singing, and each finger comes off one by one. Like, I love that stuff. I love it. Yeah.
I really like that with the invisibility thing. They really tied it to like his emotions. Like he truly doesn't have like any control over it. Where he's like, oh, how'd you do it? Do it again. He's like, oh, I don't know. And then somebody knocks on the door, and you just see him go, boop.
And then like just a bunch of little small moments of like, lady, clean your desktop. Like,
oh, that desktop was insane, man.
You know what? It's Doc Ock. She could probably pinpoint anything in that, like with the look. But at the same time, I was looking at that like, Jesus, like
that was stressing me out.
The fact you could even. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You're already talking. Go ahead. My bad, man.
I was gonna say like how everyone in that scene, everyone has like she's Doc Ock because like the octagons and the lights and the octagons in her eyes, and there's octagons everywhere. There's literally a Dr. Octopus arm chilling on the desk next to the computer.
Yep.
Like there's it was like the reveal, and like the way the camera works, and this was like a great piece of just like cinematography, is like you see the arm for the first time when Peter first comes down from the ceiling, and the way the camera lines up, because the arm is disassembled. The camera like starts to move, and only at the right moment can you see the fully like assembled like arm, and then it moves a little bit, and then you can't see it again. So it's like they're literally like teasing out the fact that Doc Ock is coming with like just these little like octagons, and the arm is right there. Even in the classroom scene when they're watching the documentary, you see like Dr. Octavius, and you see like her name Dr. O is like blocked off. So the whole movie they're constantly saying like, we're telling you, like. Yeah,
and for me, I thought that it was just little teases like that. So I was like, oh, this is not going to be Doc Ock. This is just like a fan service nod thing. And then when she takes off the jacket, I was just like, I'm blown away. Again, constantly blown away in that movie.
She was also kind of like hot, right? Like,
for sure.
She was like hot.
I loved her octopus. Sure. Her arms.
Oh, it was so
like just.
Yeah. So I'm glad they made it different than.
You're pushing him in the chair, and you're like, oh.
Hey.
I mean. Let's do this.
By the way, another thing just made me, I busted up laughing so hard. He's like, I got good news. We don't need the monitor. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Like, you don't.
And it goes to what you said earlier. Like, he's doing all of this off of experience, and it's kind of a joke that like the bad guys always do the same thing, and Miles has never been in any situation like that, so he's just panicking pretty much the entire time. It's great to see.
And then you got a guy who's panicking still, but slightly less. He's like, hey, here's a little something to like alleviate that. No monitor. It's great.
Just the nonchalantness of Peter is just.
It was so cool.
Like coupled with Miles and experience, it's absolutely just amazing.
I have villains in the chat, and I know I put it on the thing to talk about a little bit later, but Kingpin's shape, just in general. I'm curious of your guys' thoughts.
He's like a turtle. It's like somebody made a wall, and then they put a face on it. Like, I don't know how this like anatomically works, but it seems that his like shoulders are above his head.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like his traps are just like, oh my, like, how does he sleep? I wonder. Like, does he just like roll around like?
That's a good question.
He don't lay down on his back. When he couldn't get up, he wouldn't be able to get up.
Something tells me.
Poor Vanessa.
Poor Vanessa. How did they have a kid? Oh, he looks like a fold up bed that goes into the wall. Like he looks like the bed. That's all. Though I think he sleeps. Something tells me he sleeps standing up.
For sure.
I'm
He
dead
has
serious.
to. Or else I feel like he's like choke on himself or something.
But you know,
Go ahead.
his body, like the moment that made me realize like that the body is like almost like it's a choice to make it that way, because not only is he like big and imposing, but there's like a scene, it's like the first scene where we're introduced to him. It's when like he's telling Spider-Man that he's about to turn on the collider for the first time, and when you look at him, it literally shows like his entire body and his head and his face, which just at the center.
Yeah.
Right. And when you like think about the Kingpin, you think of like somebody who's just this like dark individual who literally has their influence like everywhere. So it was like a nice visual way to just show like Kingpin's like dark influence reaching like all over the screen, and like kind of like in his own way, Kingpin is a spider.
Yeah.
And he's like at the center of the screen, and his darkness is his web, which it gets further paid off by Peter Parker saying he has his like he's in everyone's pocket, like everyone like is part of like him. So that was like really interesting to show that.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect. I mean, he was big. It looks crazy, but like you said, the imagery of it made him stand out rather than like just a big guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just a big black square that he was. It was just something that it screamed main antagonist. You know what I mean? Like if you saw that guy, you'd be like, okay, that guy is evil. That guy's 100% evil.
And it also it makes that two scenes really more imposing when he kills Spider-Man, first of all. But when it's just Miles and him at the very end, and Miles is this tiny little figure. But I found a picture of young Kingpin. I thought I'd share with you guys real quick. That's him when he's young.
That's perfect.
Sure.
That's great.
That's perfect.
Great. I love
it. Accurate as
No, so for me in this second act, like a couple things jumped out. I mean, again, the way that they play with these, not camera angles, but you know what I mean. When they're talking about the goober or whatever, and he's walking up and down the wall in that alley, and the way that the camera's sideways and he flips and lands on the car, and like just I just really love those little things like that. And like you said, the little training scenes where he's explaining all this stuff, and Miles is like, "That's too much stuff," and he's like, "Then stop listening to me and just do it."
Perfect BS.
Yep.
You know, but it worked.
And it works. And one of the reasons I love it, I realized today, as you guys know, I do a lot of Star Wars content. Is that it's Star Wars. Peter B. Parker is Luke in The Last Jedi. He has had a whole arc in his prime that we just haven't seen yet. He's on the downside. He's seen some stuff, and then this other person who has recently gained access to this stuff and has no idea what they're doing. But you're like, no, you need to calm down and actually feel it, listen to it. You know what I mean? Like trust your instincts. And
because Pete didn't have anybody like that when he was 15 or 16, being Spider-Man for the first time. He just had to do it.
Yeah.
And can we talk about the fact that the best teacher for Miles is one of the most imperfect Spider-Man? Because the way they set up the original Peter Parker in his universe is that he's like perfect. Like he has everything. He has Mary Jane. Like he looks really great. Like, he always...
He was even willing to take him on. He was like, hey, after this, I'll show you,
And he was excited. He was excited for it. Like, I'll show you the ropes. And then you have this other Spider-Man who's like very like, I'm not going to do that.
No,
like,
thanks.
He's trying to take your money for lunch, literally like, hey, do you have any money? I'm not looking right now. So it's like the fact that you have this inexperienced like spider person learning from an experienced spider person, but someone who's not only apprehensive, but just is like, he's not the perfect teacher. Like that's the best teacher to learn from, is someone who isn't perfect, because they're making mistakes as well. So it gives you the leeway to like the confidence to make your own mistakes also.
I couldn't have said any better.
And then also, I mean, so a couple more introductions, but Lily Tomlin as Aunt May was inspired.
My wife. Okay, so I literally held on to that piece of information for a year because like my wife is like a huge fan of the show Grace and Frankie, and Lily
Okay.
Tomlin's in it. And so like I just every time we watch Spider-Verse, I would just like sit there like I got the secret that's gonna blow your mind one day. But I'll wait, and I'll blow your mind. Then one day I just looked at her, I just said, you know who that is, right? She was like, who is it? And I said, that's Frankie. And she goes like, or is it Grace? I was like, yeah, that's Frankie. She goes, what? She like loses her shit. And now she wants to watch Spider-Verse like 100 times after that just to see Aunt May.
No, her performance is just great, and the introduction of the other Spider-Man, specifically Nicolas Cage. I'm like, is there
He's
wind
so
in the
funny.
basement? It's like there's always wind when I'm here.
Oh man, he
And the
killed
wind
it,
smells
man.
of rain.
He absolutely killed him.
Every line that he had was like a banger of a line. Like even when like they all like get up and then like Miles gives his like big speech like I made a promise and I have to keep it. The music kind of swells and you just have Nicolas Cage. Who are you again?
my favorite line throughout the one of my favorite lines of his is just like, can you shove down your feelings? Or what was how it went? Because he was they were
Oh, when they were interrogating him on was he worth it or not?
yeah, and he was like, can you shove down your feelings so you don't have to deal with the moral ambiguity of your
the moral ambiguity of your violent actions.
of your violent actions. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I started cracking up when
such a great when he goes he's staring right at us while we're talking about him. Like they're all over here. He says it out.
Sometimes I like to hold a match and let the fire burn down to my fingers so I can feel something,
Right.
anything. Like, jeez.
It's funny because the Spider-Man Noir book is so serious, and then you think about like before he was introduced and had any lines, you're like, man, why are they going to have this in this cartoon? They're going to have this ultra serious character, but then when you think about it, it is kind of silly. It's kind of silly, and he really dove deep into that old school era, and he just killed it, man. He really did.
Absolutely. Oh, I have a new favorite Spider Noir line. It's when Miles like runs in screaming about how Prowler was trying to kill him and that it's his uncle, and then like you just hear Spider-Man Noir go, "This is a pretty hardcore origin story."
Yeah, that's great.
Actually, speaking of that, real quick before moving on to the final act, since this section was so big, I really want to talk about that. First of all, Miles's realization of who his uncle is, because that scene was freaking intense.
It hurt. Hurt. That was a rough scene.
As well as the fight that he leads them back to, where he ends up dying during that fight. And I'm trying to remember who I started with last time. I think I started with Juju. Lex.
So that fight, that whole scene is layered in different ways. You have Miles ready to quit. Yeah, obviously riddled with self-doubt. You have the other Spider-Man kind of lose faith in him. They're trying to take it over, and just kind of alleviate some of that stress from him. And then the Uncle Aaron thing. Not only does Uncle Aaron get killed, and Miles has to deal with realizing that's Prowler, realizing it's probably his fault that he's dead, and then on top of all that, then Miles' dad comes and finds his brother dead, and then he sees his dad filled with hate towards him. You know what I mean? Kind of directed her like, what did you do situation. So this is a kid that just no kid has to deal with one of those things a lot of times in their life. So this kid has to deal with all of these layered events all happening within like a 30, 45 minute span. It's a little overwhelming. And the movie does a really good job at making you feel the weight of it. So
it'll be one scene, and you feel like there's paint buckets of emotion, and like people are hitting you like every 45 seconds, but in a way that feels natural to the story progression. But Zeph, what do you think?
Oh, Uncle Aaron's death scene. I like how because I think it would have just been easy to make it like Uncle Ben number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It would have been just super easy to go that route, but they didn't. It's funny because I think the thing that really got me about that scene was right before he died, when he had him by the collar and whatnot, and he sees that it's Miles, and for a split second I thought he was about to kill him. because he was putting his mask back down, and Kingpin was telling him to finish the job.
Mhm.
You see him pull him back up, and then you see Kingpin just shoot him. And for me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
okay, that clipped the heartstring.
Yeah, for sure. It all happened so fast too.
It happened way fast. And then, like Lex was saying, seeing his dad there and everything, just the entire, like, you feel the weight of that scene. Most animated movies handling, I haven't seen a character death handled that well in an animated film since like Mufasa or something like that.
That's exactly where my mind went.
Yeah, since like Mufasa, just the way
That's
that
the
was
one you think about.
Yeah, since the way that was handled. Yeah, I really like how they went about it. Yeah.
I mean, especially when you consider how when you looked on Uncle Aaron's phone, it's a picture of him and his brother.
Yeah.
And then when you look at his dad's phone, it's another picture of them, even though they don't talk.
Yeah. And it drops hints at the beginning of their strained relationship. His dad's like, I don't want you hanging out with him, or whatever he said. You get little hints at their relationship. And so for them to come back together in that scene and they didn't reconcile, he's dead now. Right. It's just a rough thing.
Right. I think that's like a byproduct of like the overall like mythos of Spider-Man, where it's like all these characters, there are some characters that are just like bad for the sake of bad, like they just like robbing banks and shit, like Shocker and Vulture and all these other type of things. But then you have characters like Kingpin and the Prowler, who like you can tell they one decision in another direction and they will be completely different people.
Yeah.
And so Prowler is like definitely one of those characters, because when you do get introduced to him, not only do you see this person who you're going to see as an antagonist have a loving relationship with his nephew, like giving him advice, teaching him about girls, like being worried about his well-being. And then like you see like you said, the photo, like there's a photo in his phone of him and his brother, and you could just, and even in Brian Tyree's performance as Miles Morales' dad, like you can feel the hurt in his voice when he speaks about his brother. You could just feel a backstory without having to see the backstory. And so when you have that death, it's a tragedy, because you can tell like maybe if he would have just made that decision to protect Miles earlier, maybe if it wasn't on the roof, maybe if he would have made that decision inside the house, maybe he would have been able to help Miles even further and like kind of like help him through that. But instead, you have this man who went down the wrong path and he made the right decision at the wrong time. And that right there is like the guilt of Spider-Man, because Spider-Man has done that. Peter has done that, and that led to his Uncle Ben dying. So you have Miles Morales actually seeing that hit close to home. Yeah, that's what made it like super powerful for me.
Yeah, it's God. I'm just always reeling at how well crafted every little bit of this film was, because then after that, you have his dad coming to Miles, and like I didn't get to reconcile with my brother.
Yeah.
And I know you and I are going through some stuff, so we need to, and Miles can't talk to him at that moment. And that was hurting me a little bit too. Also just the little clever thing of the artwork that him and Uncle Aaron were doing. First of all, the music of that during their graffiti was just
cool.
Amazing. But the graffiti says no expectations, and Aaron is the only person that fully just accepted Miles as he was right now and didn't want to change him. Now, the other people didn't want to change him. They wanted him to be better because they knew he could.
Yeah. And they had opportunities that they didn't have when they were younger, so they wanted to provide him with more.
And neither one of those is wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so that's and then having the great expectations be a common theme throughout this whole.
Yeah. I think like the theme. Sorry if I'm interrupting.
No, go ahead. I was done.
I was gonna say, I think like the theme of like the best expectations are the ones that like you can, the biggest expectations are the ones like you have from yourself, and that comes from like the expectations that people placed on you. But when it comes to like being a hero or being the best version of yourself, it's making your own choices and being like the best version of yourself that you can be. right? Because when you think of like Miles, where he is as a character, like he was under a lot of this pressure to kind of like be in his father's footsteps and like, you know, go to the school, get the education, like pretty much be the version of your father that your father didn't get to be. And
Yeah.
then you have the Prowler who accepts him for who he is. But then, you know, once he gets his spider powers, now he has this whole new heap of expectations because he knows that everyone knows what a Spider-Man is supposed to be. He's seen
Yeah.
Spider-Man like save the day time and time again. So when you have like scenes of him looking at Spider-Man's outfit, and there's like the moment where you see his face in the reflection, and it's like not in the mask, it's like in the chest, showing that he hasn't lived up to it yet. Then the moment he decides to be his own version of Spider-Man and do it his way, which is like, I wish, like, this is why sometimes I hate trailers, because sometimes they put things in the trailer and like they take it out in the movie, even though it's really great in the trailer.
Yeah.
Is there's a moment where Peter B. Parker tells him, don't, where Miles tells Peter like, oh, I can't do it like you. And then Peter says, well, don't do it like me.
Yeah.
Do it like you. And that's like the theme of Spider-Man, where it's like, we are only as good as like what we can, like, we only are able to do our best when we're doing it ourselves. Like, and like the fact that Miles was able to learn that through this movie, through like losing Prowler, through being in close proximity with the other Spider people, I thought that was like beautifully done.
Which is also why I say again that it's Star Wars, because that's what Luke had to do. He couldn't follow the Jedi's advice and kill Vader, and you know, obviously Vader is not a great role model, but he did it his way.
As he killed like several million people
and a few dozen younglings.
Exactly.
Hey, you know,
hey, Prowler almost killed a youngling. Now that you think about it,
almost killed his nephew.
Yeah.
No, but that's why Prowler is such an interesting character, and to me, it kind of symbolizes like what we do in the dark. Because you know he doesn't consider himself a bad person. He puts on the mask and he's a bad person. That's a different guy. He's doing these things, you know, but he's not one person. Like, you have to. I always strive myself to be one person. I'm the same person with my wife as I am with my parents, which I am at work, which I am talking to you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I know there's just many layers. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump to the final act.
There's so much in this final act.
But this whole movie is jam packed with. The more you watch it, the more you see, and it's never ending. There's so much to it.
There's a lot to unpack.
I mean, yeah. So this is basically where the rest of the team, you know, leaves him behind and everything, and all the way through the end of the movie. Zeph, you're up first.
Okay. Well, I think Miles really just coming into his own and whatnot. You know, it's like that. I'm sure everyone's gonna say this scene, but you know what I'm talking about. The one you know, he's on the window. You know, you gotta take the leap of faith, and he's standing there on the window and whatnot. And he's like, okay, he's like, well, time to be Spider-Man, and boom, you know, takes a leap of faith, and you know, you just, you know, maybe not fully coming to, you know, who he is as a, you know, Spider-Man yet, but you know, he's just beginning that journey into, you know, who he is as a superhero, you know, doing, you know, what he does. And it was just that transition, and then the confidence he has when he gets, you know, into the collider and whatnot. You know, he's doing all this stuff. He's still in the goober from Peter, or when he's telling him, yeah, I'm about to go plug in the goober right now. Goes through the buildings, does all this stuff, and it's like, did we teach him that? Like,
such
no.
a great scene.
like we did not teach him that. It's just it was really nice to see that that confidence he had now, or as IGN would say, that exaggerated swagger.
But exaggerated swagger. I had that swagger before. I remember.
But it was really nice culmination of Miles' development at the end of the movie. It was just such a satisfying, such to see. It's like, okay, yeah, now he's like, you know, now he can really begin to, you know, his journey into becoming, you know, the the great hero we all know him for. So
Right.
It's so hard to stick the landing, and it did so well. You know what I mean? There's so many movies where I love the film so much, but like the ending was just like a little weak. You know, and you're like, okay, that's
The
Wolverine.
Talk about engine.
But yeah, your thoughts, Juju?
Yeah, so like in this final act, like I think it goes exactly what I was saying in that the whole theme of the movie is, and it's kind of like, you know, the possibilities of like things you can be and how like it's the choices that you make. It's the Spider-Man choices, and I feel like the complete utter like bonkersness of, if that's a word, of like, you know, the collider like going just fucking crazy. You see like all these different universes just flying all over the place. You just see these universes coming into their universes. And then I think this is mostly illustrated by the scene where Miles is taking on Kingpin in the subway that's like going crazy, and you see like different versions of like his family, right? And and that's when you look at these universes, like the whole purpose of Kingpin doing these universes is because he's like, there's a universe where they're alive, where I made the choice that like they're alive. And like when you're seeing like multiple versions of his family like kind of appear, then you're seeing like all these versions of what he could have had he made like better choices. And so like right there off the bat, you see like a dichotomy between the Spider-Man and Kingpin, whereas like Kingpin basically took this route that got him to where he is in this particular moment, and that's familyless. Whereas Miles, like he's made his choices and he still has his father like over there in the corner, and his like, because of his choices, his dad is more concrete versus like a shell of like family of his dad from like a different universe. And I think what a lot of people don't talk about is the scene where everything's starting to get kind of like sucked back into the collider, and Miles gets on the ceiling and his eyes go wide and you see him get a look into it. And this is like getting like really nerdy. The web of destiny. He gets like a peek into the web of destiny, and you see like to us as the audience, you know, you're just seeing like, oh yeah, so this is like, you know, the Spider-Verse. That's the personification of the Spider-Verse. But what he's really looking at is like, and this is the same thing that Peter saw when he first looked into it as well. And it's seeing like all these different like possibilities of like who Spider people could be, what the world could be like, given like how the choices that you've made. And I remember like I caught this, I think it was like the second time I watched it. Me and my work partner went to a screening with the directors and the writers, and Phil Lord and Chris Miller were there. And so like obviously like I had to get like my question out, and I said, tell me, was that the web of destiny? And he looked at me and was like, you're the first fucking person to like really bring up that reference. And he went to this whole spiel about how like, yeah, so the web of destiny, most people won't know it, and like basically what I'm saying right now. But I just found that very strong, how that whole final act is just like this, literally like a bunch of different universe of possibilities like literally happening around you. And like there's one choice to make, and that's to save the day, and that's what's going to make everything concrete again. I just found that to be like a very like powerful metaphorical thing that the movie did.
Yeah. Whew, absolutely.
Yeah,
that was great.
I love this movie, guys. I love it.
How about you, Lex?
So everything that they said, it's the easy answer. But there's the little things. I as I've mentioned a lot of times since we've been talking, is I love the little things in it. I love at this point of the movie, you feel the desperation from Kingpin. Like, it's not necessarily that he's evil. It's that he's desperate to see his family again. They make you feel that, you know what I mean? And he starts to slip, and you feel him slipping, and you feel his desperation increase because he feels like he's about to lose his only chance. So I love that. And I also love the shift in how all of these Spider-Men were looking down on Miles, and then and at this point they're all in awe of the things that he's doing just from being himself. So those were cool. And Aunt May doesn't get enough credit in this movie because she's
took you long enough.
Badass. I mean, she's just proven that she is a rock in Spider-Man's life, and it doesn't matter which Spider-Man it is. It's not in this act, but her interaction with this Peter B. Parker, that probably is my favorite scene in the whole movie, just because he's kind of ashamed that he didn't live up to what what he thinks he should be in her eyes, and then she accepts him because she can tell just by his face that he's been through it. You know what I mean? And so she doesn't get enough credit in this movie. She's a rock. So
May is always a baddie.
Oh yeah.
May is always a baddie.
Yeah.
Like the minute she like really like most people will freak out that this is like a different universe of their dead nephew.
Yeah.
But the fact she kind of like took it in stride and was just kind of like that's probably the coolest thing that an aunt can like really do. Just like,
she even made fun of him for making sweatpants. She was like, sweatpants.
You know what? I'm sure after the Clone Saga, I'm sure she's up for just anything at this point. She's probably seen Peter, like 5 different times already.
Oh, that Ben Reilly. He comes by every week for tea and shit. So this doesn't surprise me at all.
That's another thing I've always wondered, man. I've always wondered, since he was blonde and everything, I always wondered if that was the world where their Peter Parker just either died and then Ben Reilly kept going as Spider-Man, and then that's who Peter Parker is since he was blonde. But it's one of those things where you start to make things up after you see the movie for 1,000 times.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories, man.
Actually, I don't think Peter's dead. Actually, I think that was Ben we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's not just randomly that they decided to make him blonde. With
as many details they put into this movie, Peter being blonde was not some like random thing they did. Like, no, they did that on purpose.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's like a theory also running around that I've been getting a lot in my comments that Mary Jane probably like was working with Kingpin and set up like this version of Spider-Man.
Oh,
and it's really like weird because like
that's dark.
Like because somebody said that in my comments, and then like I started to watch the movie in that light, and I was just thinking to myself like, okay, so Mary Jane obviously knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, okay, which means that she would know that Kingpin would be the villain. So why is Mary Jane hanging out at a benefit with Kingpin where they're celebrating Spider-Man if she would have known? So it's just one of those like, it's kind of sus, but somebody also tried to say, oh, maybe she's undercover, and I'm like, no, like, I don't know. I don't believe it, but
I agree with you because she looked way too comfortable.
Sitting
at that table eating bread, like
she wasn't sad.
The man that
in a movie where they really dive deep into the emotions of all the characters, she really wasn't. You didn't really get any sadness from her.
You didn't get a lot from her, no.
Yeah.
It's true, but I mean, if there was some sadness, I think it would have just made the movie harder because of how hard it was hitting Peter B. Parker. Just seeing her, and he's like, and Gwen's like, all right, calm down, like,
been there.
I love how Gwen is like, I'm hanging out with you.
Like, right.
You understand why that might be difficult. Like, if I can handle this, you can get your crap together, and
Absolutely.
Again, though, that brings you back to the Ben Reilly thing, because it's like, if that actually was Peter, I feel like she'd actually be
right. Yeah,
she probably ties all these together, like,
right. So maybe that wasn't her Peter. Like,
maybe she wasn't sad because her Peter is at home, and then she went there to sort of like pay his respect.
Exactly.
Probably. I mean, it does link credits to the fact that if it was Ben Reilly, he did say Kingpin has everyone in his pocket too. So maybe that was another person that's in his pocket. But then again, like, while we're just throwing out rant, it could have been Chameleon. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, I'm not sleeping tonight. I'm about to rewatch this movie again.
I know, right?
The world will never know.
Like, what happened there?
Can we talk about how dope Spider-Man Noir looked with just the white bow tie? Like, in his,
it's that easy. He was looking clean. He was looking real clean.
I was like, I might need to cosplay that one. So
another one of my favorite Spider-Man Noir scenes is like when he's fighting Tombstone. Like when he like says, "Are you gonna fight or you just popping gums? You something turtle snapper wagger."
So good.
And he hits him dead in the face, and there's like a giant like panel that says applesauce.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Nicolas Cage is perfect. If they ever do Spider-Man Noir in live action, he needs to be in it. I can't.
Oh, absolutely,
100%.
He needs to be black and white too.
Oh.
I would kill to see Nicolas Cage in black and white. That'd be great.
And also, I mean, Zeph, you touched on it, but when we get that scene where Miles jumps off the building, which the scene right here,
That was my screensaver for like 2 years.
but you know, they bring it out how two things, how he breaks the glass, but the glass is being pulled outward. When he jumps off of it, meaning he was still stuck to the glass. So he's still afraid. Yeah. He is not relaxed, but he knows that he's ready. You know what I mean? He knows he's the dude at that point in time, which is awesome. And then this particular imagery where they flipped it because they wanted it to show that he's rising while he's falling. It just, I don't know, it just
like,
too many layers, man.
He's stressed that he's only had his powers for 3 days, and at this point of the movie, so this guy's like still figuring it out. He's just taking the leap of faith, and it's a perfect imagery, man. This movie is full of just those perfect images.
But it's been clear that he's had this all along, because there's the first scene, he's walking across the street, car almost hits him, he flips over the car and lands, people clap.
That's true.
Prowler's chasing him, and then they have the car accident and he slips through the scene. Like every time he's needed to, he can do it.
It just happens.
And he just has to be able to trust that he.
And I feel like that's not just with his spider powers either, because like Spider-Man is not just his spider powers. He's also like a genius level like intellect. He's able to think about things strategically, and Miles also demonstrates that as well, while not knowing that he's doing it. Like giving valuable information to the spider people that even they didn't know. Like when Spider-Man is planning to break into Alchemex, and Miles is the one who tells him that, it's actually Dr. Octavius who's the one who leads this thing. He also tells Peter, when he has him like tied to the punching bag, about like his theory on like guessing that he's from a different universe, because he learned about it in physics. Like it's not just like a random piece of writing where he goes like, he just kind of guessed that. No, it wasn't a guess. He literally learned about it in that day and he retained it, which is like also very impressive. So it's like Miles has all of these capabilities, like all of these things to be a great Spider-Man. He just hasn't realized it yet.
Right.
I love that scene so much. Where he's like, "Am I dead? You're supposed to be dead? Are you a zombie? Am I a zombie?
Am I a zombie?
Are you from an alternate universe?" And like
that was just a guess. Yeah, we learned about it in physics. Like it's nothing. We learned about it in physics, quantum theory. It's whatever.
So that's kind of one of the things I liked about MCU Spider-Man, is that Spider-Man is smart as heck. A lot of people don't give him enough credit. Like he's like one of the smartest characters in the Marvel universe. Miles is no different. He's a very smart dude. They didn't. I don't know if they didn't really dive that deep into it. Because he just got. I mean, they showed how how smart he is, because he got into the. He was able to go to that charter school and whatnot. But. Yeah, maybe going into the next movie, I hope they explore that more. I feel like they will, just because I think Spider-Man, and his intelligence is a big part of his character.
Right.
I remember when people were talking about Tom Holland Spider-Man, they were like, why does he have all these gadgets and parachutes? And he's Tony Stark #2. I'm like, well, he kind of is.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's always had gadgets. He's always had that stupid parachute thing in the back of his suit and whatnot.
He's always had the web wings, man. The web wings were
exactly.
And those are like the 70s and 80s. Like that technology wasn't around back then. Like I'm pretty sure he would have that stuff back then.
Are we forgetting the Spider-Mobile? Like he had a Spider-Mobile.
I mean, the Japanese version had a giant mech robot, but that's a whole.
Just saying.
But what did they say? I think it was I think it was Ultimate Spider-Man 2, but Amazing Spider-Man 2. But when he refers to Peter as one of the greatest guerrilla scientists,
yes,
like in the moment, like he's so smart that a lot of times he doesn't have to prepare, because he can MacGyver whatever.
He can MacGyver,
and make it happen on the fly. Yeah.
One of my favorite lines from the Spider-Man game is when
I know what you're
playing it, and he's talking to Miles over the comm, and he starts giving him math problems. He's like, all right, what if something is attached at this height and is swinging, it's at this velocity? It's like, what does this have to do with being Spider-Man? He's like, well, what if you are the pendulum? He's like, oh, so you're doing this type of math all of the time? He's like, yep.
Yeah. Constantly, or else he'll die and hit the pavement. Can you imagine doing math to save your life, like constantly?
And that's what's so cool about that character, man.
Oh man, what I really dug was in that game is like when you're listening to the recordings, and the recordings are such a great way to like open up the world of like Spider-Man. It's like he's listening to a Dr. Octopus recording, and Dr. Octopus is just kind of reminiscing on the time Peter like used like some bubble gum, some like some tape and a scrunchie, and he was able to like solve this super hard mechanical problem that they were having, and he was just like, the guy's a fucking genius. And I'm like, that's Spider-Man. He could pretty much figure these things out. Like he's able to think, like the fact that he's like a ground level type of person, he's able to come up with those solutions that other people wouldn't think of, because people with big brains think of big solutions, whereas like people with like big brains but like are more down to earth think of big solutions but in little ways. So
and the fact that he's poor, and so a lot of the times he gets
dumpster diver.
He gets junk and builds things out of it. So that plays a big part of it.
That was actually one of my favorite missions of the first Spider-Man game, where you have to go around ripping out trash. His old
because he
got evicted. But
he got evicted. There's trash. He was looking for trash.
That's one of my very favorite details, because in the game you get a notice if you don't pay, you'll be evicted right when the game starts.
Yep.
And if as you play it, it's like 3 or 4 days in game that this happens, and he goes back and he's evicted, and he's like, oh yeah, they already said this.
One of my favorite Spider-Man moments in comic books is a conversation he has with Tony Stark, where he basically is saying, oh, we're getting paid to do this. And Tony Stark's like, you're a genius. Like, why are you poor? And Peter says, I don't care about money. Like, I do for the science. I do things for this, and I save people because it's the right thing to do. Like, I don't care about that. So it's not important to me. You know what I mean? So it doesn't register the same way. And that's an ongoing theme with the character.
That's what I love about Spider-Man so much, is that he is and that's why he's my favorite character, because like every other superhero that was created before him, they were either like super rich or they were like just very, very well off. And even when they would save the day, they never would pay attention to the like personal ramifications like that would happen to them. Like Fantastic Four will fight a giant like molten man that came out of the ground, and then they'll go back to this like nice ass building with like 28,000 floors, and they got a loft and shit. And then you have like Spider-Man, who like literally is like, oh yeah, so I'll fight the Green Goblin. He killed my girl, but I also have math the next day.
He's fighting with the Fantastic Four, and they go to their high rise, and then he goes back to his crappy apartment that he can barely afford.
Which he goes back to try and find the pizza that he was supposed to deliver when this whole thing got
exactly. Which is why, and I don't want to get too far into it, because I know that's probably another podcast for another day. But that's why I feel Spider-Man 2 kind of like nails Spider-Man before anyone else really a live action movie ever had the chance to. And it's because it's the one scene where like right after he like has a night of fighting crime, he goes back to this really crappy apartment. Like I think he just had, like, it was his birthday. His best friend's still kind of like upset at Spider-Man. Like he realizes Mary Jane is like about to get engaged to this fucking like perfect dude. His aunt May is like about to get evicted from her spot, and like he just goes back to his apartment and he sits on this crappy bed in this crappy apartment, and he sits for a little bit, and then he goes and turns on a police scanner. And I'm like, that's what Spider-Man is. Like he doesn't have he doesn't have everything, but he still like does the right thing.
He can't have everything. And
Exactly.
So all right. I hate to bring the mood down, but we got to talk about Stan Lee.
Oh my gosh.
This came out this was the first thing that came out after he passed away. And this one hit me personally, because it's so much more than all of his other cameos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, most of his cameos don't have a lot of speaking. But Lex, your thoughts on it?
So like you said, this one had a lot more meaning to it. it had a important connection part. Stan Lee loved Spider-Man. He did. He loved Miles, and so this was a all of his other movies. He's always usually silly in all his other cameos, but this one where he says the suit always fits. Like, to me, that pulled at my heartstrings, and I was just like, this is more of a touching moment than any of the random scenes that he's been in, and it was like the perfect cameo for me. It's my favorite Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah. It's definitely up there for me. I remember seeing that, and like I really wish I can say that this is the last Stan Lee cameo, because I think Captain Marvel came out a little bit after that.
Yeah.
And that cameo, as great as it is, like it felt like a cameo that definitely would have been better if it was maybe a year or two before. Because I feel like this right here works as the final like Stan Lee send-off.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like he's giving a message not just to Miles but to us as like an audience.
Yeah,
it just is us as people, like, and all superheroes.
Yeah, caps it off.
And so like and then it still has that classic like Stan Lee comedic timing. He gives you this fucking gem of the suit always fits eventually, and then it turns and you see like no refunds. And you're just like, that's something that Stan Lee would leave you with a joke before like making you want to cry. And then you see the Captain Marvel one, and then it's just him reading a Mallrats script, which is perfect because he was actually in Mallrats in the 90s. But it was just kind of like it was almost like a nice little epilogue that makes you go like, oh damn, he's really gone. But this cameo definitely like kind of hit me personally, like where it really hurt.
By far his definitely the best cameo. It's with the first off, it's with Spider-Man. That's the dude that pretty much made his career. You can't when you think of Stan Lee, what's the first character you think of? Obviously Spider-Man. Obviously he didn't
actually think of Doctor Doom first, but that's
well, usually
Doctor Doom is my number one, Spider-Man's my number two. So
right. So I think a lot like what Lex and Juju said. It's a perfect send off. Especially with Spider-Man and whatnot. It did hit. It did hit kind of different though, knowing that he was gone. And then seeing that scene, it's like, oh well, this is the
it's just one of those oof moments. Like
it's like one of those oof moments. It's like I wasn't
ready.
This is really it. Like it doesn't really hit the same at the end, but obviously like Judy said, that comedic timing at the end with the no refunds. It's like, okay, well, I'm less sad now, but
it was almost like it was made to like with them knowing that he was going to pass, and like it's almost like Stan Lee knew that we were going to miss him, and he just said it was like him saying like, don't cry, like I wanted you to smile in my life, keep smiling in my death, And when I went to that pre-screening, Phil Lord somebody asked a question about like the Stan Lee cameo, because this was like literally like maybe a month after he passed away, and they asked him if he was able to see like his final like that cameo, and they said like he unfortunately passed away before actually seeing that scene, which even made me go like, oh fuck, like he basically went into work, set the line to everyone around the world, and then just peaced out peacefully.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So it's just a wild way to make that.
Yeah. But Stan was always I remember watching a lot of his interviews and whatnot. He'd always be saying stuff like, everyone can be a superhero. Everyone has the ability to do great things and whatnot. So just have a line like, yo, the suit always fits. It's just just absolutely perfect just way to just send him off, because that's what he always believed in. He believed everyone can do good and be the superheroes he writes about.
I mean, he's a guy that greenlit X-Men, literally a show about I mean a comic about the civil rights movement, like during that time.
People get mad when I say like
balls.
Give people black cards. I'm like, Stan Lee has a black card. I'm gonna just say like he has a lifetime hood pass. He gets a free barber cut. He gets a free cut at the barbershop. Like
Stanley was down everywhere. I mean, he was an anime fan. He was doing stuff in Japan. I mean, that dude was down for whatever nerdy stuff. It doesn't matter who you were, where you were from. If you wanted to do something nerdy, he was down. He was down to do it with you. Didn't care.
Yeah. Dude, like here's something that's gonna sound weird, but I promise you it ties back. I watched the movie City of God last night. If those of you guys don't know, it's like I think it's a Brazilian like hood film, and it's like super hardcore, like really hard, very violent. And there was this one character who rose to the top to be like this drug lord. His partner's just killing people left and right, but the whole time he's like really, really cool. Like when his partner points a gun at somebody, you know they're about to die, but that dude is always the one to like take the gun by the barrel and go, "Nah, man, he's cool. He's cool." And then one day he decides to like finally get out, and then somebody trying to kill his best friend accidentally kills him, and that sets like literally the whole hood on fire. The guy's like, "Oh my god, I didn't mean to do it," and he runs to this other guy, like the enemy, but the enemy is still cool with him, and the guy goes, "You just killed the coolest hood in all of Rio," and he kills the guy who killed him like off top. and so like with Stanley, I really do feel like when it comes to like even with like his competitors, like he has that type of respect where even when you're like whether you're working with him or competing against him, when he passed away, everyone was just kind of like, that was the coolest guy in all of geekdom. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It wraps back around.
I was wondering how you gonna bring that back.
I got it.
All right. Well, so I only got a couple more things. First thing I want to hit is let's hit the characters. So I'm curious if you guys have hit your favorite villain, your favorite other Spider-Man, and then any final thoughts on Miles specifically. What I said, I went to Lex last. No, I went to Zeph last time. So Juju.
Okay, so it's funny because like I was like, oh my god, that's such a hard question. Like I know my favorite Spider-Man is Peter Parker because that's the one I kind of like grew up with. I related to him the most. Like there's just so much about that character that like I'm just in love with. But favorite villain, I thought that was hard, but like immediately I was like, oh, it's got to be Doc Ock. Like because a lot of people like to think when it comes to like Spider-Man's arch nemesis, people like to go straight to Green Goblin. But I would argue that it's Doc Ock. Like Doc Ock is the one that like can match him wit for wit. He poses a physical threat, and he also more often times than not, he figures out Peter's identity, and like he kind of like still has like it's almost like a respect between the two, like because they know they're going against each other, but at the same time they know like what the other stands for, and like it's like, hey, Spider-Man beats me every time, and like anybody who can beat me is okay with me. I'm still gonna come after him, and there's just something like admirable about that, especially the Superior Spider-Man arc just kind of like highlighted a bunch of things about.
Yeah, I was gonna say dude took over his body for a year.
It took over his body, and like everything, like you got to really like get to know who Doc Ock was as a person and really explore that grudging respect between the two. And so
when he punches Scorpion's jaw off, he's like
he's
off of his face. He's like, he could do that. He could have killed me at any given moment.
Such a great moment. He's like, oh my god, this guy was fucking holding back. Like,
holding back.
But yeah, I think, and I'm sorry, I don't think I remember if there was a third question, but I think like that's my favorite Spider-Man. And then like I guess Toby is definitely like my favorite like Peter Parker like live action movie wise for sure.
And then the last one was any closing thoughts on Miles specifically?
Oh, I just think Miles is probably one of the best comic book characters to come out like in the last like 8 years. I believe he was like created in 2012 or 11, and I really feel like Miles has now paved this way because we've had characters like Miles before, like a Luke Cage that like embraced the culture and everything, but I think like Miles is the one that kind of modernized it and made it mainstream and made it like cool and like really went full tilt without it being like almost like a caricature, because like Luke Cage still kind of talks like he's from the 70s. Sweet Christmas, that's his catchphrase and everything. Whereas Miles was more of the representation of like what a person of color a young person of color is in the United States today. And like I think like Miles is just he's going to continue to pave the way for like many more characters. I believe he paved the way for Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel.
Absolutely, I
and
love
so
Miss
like
Marvel.
she's so
Yeah.
great. So I think we have Miles to thank for that.
Yeah.
And how about you, Lex?
So Doc Ock, my favorite villain as well. I wish I saw more Scorpion because I thought that interpretation of Scorpion was really, really cool.
Scary.
Yeah, I just was like, oh man, this is different. This is cool. I like this. And I was okay with, we had so many characters we were introducing in this movie, so I was okay with not getting a full deep dive on Scorpion, but he definitely caught my eye in it. My favorite Spider-Man other than Miles, Peter B. Parker was my favorite character in that movie besides Miles. Spider-Man Noir stole the show. My least favorite Spider-Man was Spider-Ham, and I wanted to like Spider-Ham, but he was a little jarring to me, and I don't know.
I just love John Mulaney.
John Mulaney's great, and it was just
What happens when you get bit by a radioactive pig?
I liked it, but at the same time, he was my least favorite out of all of them. As far as Miles goes, Miles to me, it's really hard. Okay, so in comic books, legacy characters get judged really hard. I don't think they have any real successful legacy characters besides like Wally West. He's probably the only one for me that is a success. And it's like a generational thing.
Guy Gardner.
No,
Bro.
I think about the Green Lanterns, but they're not really legacy characters. You know what I mean? They're like guys with a Green Lantern job.
I was gonna say you can give it to Guy Gardner, like a little bit.
But like Spider-Man came out and changed the game years ago. He was a character that people could relate to, the nerd that gets shoved into the closet that wants to be more, that can be more. And so I liked Spider-Man, but it wasn't really my generation. Static Shock came out, and that was sort of my generation's archetype of Peter Parker. And so that's the character for me that stuck the most. And to get to see as a grown-up, to see this new character come in, to be an Afro-Latino character, to stick so well, to be a Spider-Man at the same time as another Spider-Man and be so well received. Even though he's not my generation version of that character, it's really great to see. And I have such an appreciation, just even if it stopped now and they didn't, his book ended and they didn't do another movie, the impact that his character has on movies, comic books, cartoons, things like that will ripple for the years to come. So I have a huge admiration for that character and a lot of respect for him. So
yeah, absolutely. And Zeph?
Okay, so favorite villain, I'm about to follow crowd on this one because she stole the show. Doc Ock, and she was so dope, man. Like especially from her reveal, because you just see her, and she's just like this nerdy, quirky girl, just working for Kingpin. You can do this, she's doing this and that, and then that switch, that switch that flips in her head,
real threat. Yeah,
exactly.
My enemies call me Doc Ock.
Like enemies, I'm like, what? And then that
right before that
yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be super painful, and I can't wait to watch.
Oh, the switch was so great.
Okay.
Catherine Hahn, man.
Yeah.
Catherine Hahn just kills it.
But
She's gonna be in WandaVision.
She absolutely killed it. And just with her whole design, she wasn't some carbon copy of regular Doc Ock either.
Yeah.
Had her own design. I loved the way her arms were, like that rubber material, whatever you call it. I don't know what it's called.
Science.
Yeah, so she's definitely my science. Yeah, but she's definitely my favorite villain from the movie. Favorite Spider-Man, Spider-Noir stole the show for me. Like I know he didn't have that much dialogue, but when he did speak, it was gold every time.
He had no right to be that good, man.
Exactly.
None.
It was ridiculous.
No right whatsoever. I hope he gets more dialogue in the next movie because I just want to see him talk more and just interact with things.
The Rubik's Cube line. We didn't talk about that. The Rubik's Cube line.
Exactly.
What is
I don't know how it works, but I'll find out.
Exactly. And favorite Spider-Man, or I guess as far as like between like Tom and Toby and Andrew, I have to say Tom because I really do dig how their they're showing Spider-Man's intelligence now.
Mhm.
And I feel like that was a really missing point between the last two Peter Parkers. Because obviously I think what the last two movies did well is show Peter Toby more so than Andrew, but the struggle Peter goes through every day with being Spider-Man and also being this kid in high school.
Yeah.
Going through all those trials and tribulations and coming home to a crappy apartment after freaking saving the city and whatnot. Yeah, so dang, I just lost my train of thought. But
no worries. But the last question was final thoughts on Miles specifically.
On Miles, I give it about a few more years. Miles is going to be as iconic, if not more iconic than Peter Parker.
Facts.
Just because what Spider-Man did at the time when he came out, he was relatable to teens. It gave something teens to relate to, and that just exploded and whatnot. And now that years later, now everywhere's getting more diverse everywhere. There's a lot of cultures everywhere now, and especially in mainstream media. And so now it's kind of like a second coming, kind of.
Yeah.
It's like a second coming now. Like, yes, it's a new Spider-Man character, but now he's Afro-Latino, and he's bringing all these new things up to the forefront, and in comics and movies now and in games, and it's really changing the landscape. As you can see, like Naomi, this character from DC, she's in the Justice League now.
Yeah,
a lot of characters of color, are starting to come to the characters of color are starting to come to the forefront now.
Love me some Jessica Cruz.
Exactly, Jessica Cruz.
Love Jessica Cruz.
It's Marvel, freaking Static. Static. We got Icon. We got Icon coming back now in a few months.
Yep.
And whatnot. So it's just like I really do think we have Miles. We have Miles in probably the Black Panther movie to think because seeing us in that light now it's that's where the media is going. I'm really happy it's headed that way. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, so for me, but by the way, we didn't get very much from Tombstone. He's look cool though. Like
no, he was there to look cool. He was there to look super cool. Like he had Black Air Force energy.
Yeah,
exactly. For real.
He's never been known for his lines, but he did a really good job at being intimidating.
He had a Dr. Octopus arm to his throat, and he still had two Glocks pointed at her. Like he had his arms up. Like I still got a scope. Like. Dude was so chill. Like the scene that you ever think of like random scenes that are just like really small and don't mean shit, but like you just think about them all the time. Like the scene where they're at the banquet and you just see like Tombstone just kind of walking, and then he tells one of his goons like, "Get out of here," and he puts like a toothpick in his mouth. He just looked so cool, just like yeah, I'm gonna just check these doors real quick. I'm like, yeah, that's Tombstone's the man.
Tombstone is a New Yorker through and through. He can act like one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, Prowler energy was just so hype. Anytime you heard the sound, you're like, "Oh no, something's happening, something bad.
Yeah.
This is not good."
TikTok ran with that sound too.
The chase, the whole chase scene. Man, I just loved like his mechanical claw grip things, like, and just the way that character was designed. He
definitely
was just a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, Prowler back in the day was always kind of lame, so they did a really good job at making it.
Oh yeah.
Also, am I crazy or in our regular Marvel universe, Prowler and Peter are friends.
Yeah, Hobby Brown.
And he dresses up as Spider-Man sometimes so that Peter can be.
I don't think it's Aaron Davis. So I think that may be.
It's not Aaron Davis.
It's Hobby. Hobby Brown is him and Peter are friends, and he works for Peter, and sometimes in that situation he does go out as.
Wasn't there an arc where like Ben Reilly came back as like the Jackal and like they killed Prowler during that,
and then cloned him and brought him right back. Yeah.
Oh, that was dark. That thing was dark.
Yeah, some weird stuff.
Spider-Man comics always get weird, man.
Especially when clones are involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe is Morlun gonna be the villain in the next Spider-Verse?
Oh,
I hope so, man.
Let's see.
I hope
Somebody's
so.
getting their eye ate.
I want.
hope so.
I'll listen as long as I can get a scene where Miles, because in Spider-Geddon, or however you pronounce it,
Yeah.
Miles takes the sword from Leopardin, the Spider-Man Gundam, charges it up with the power of the Enigma Force, and just yeets it right at Solus. It's the most anime thing ever. I'm just like, I would so love to see that on screen.
Yeah. If Spider-Man's not in the second one, I'm not going to watch it though. He's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man characters ever. So I hope they put him in there.
Yeah. I hope Penny Parker gets more to do because she was my least favorite Spider person in the whole thing. She was the least developed. Yeah. I don't know why, but I just felt the need to like yell at her the whole time. Like when her like robot died, I was like, the spider is safe. The robot will be just make a new one.
Yeah.
You're crying over a robot. The spider's on your shoulder.
Oh, but I want to. Oh, go ahead.
No, okay, continue.
I was saying, I want it to be for the new movie, just have it be just as ridiculous as Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. Like, yo, bring them all. Don't just keep it to 5. Bring
Spider-Man.
That's one
of the best. That's one of the best alternate versions of Spider-Man.
Yes, I swear there needs to be. I'm gonna hit up Marvel. I'm gonna say like, yo, we need to have a campaign thing, and we need to be able to vote for Spider-Man and Spider Cop. There is no like those.
It would be cool to
Spider
see.
Bitch. We need.
It would be cool to see the live action Spider-Man and the '90s animated series Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like a cameo.
Yes. Love that.
Definitely.
Also, obviously, because it was in the end scene credits, but Oscar Isaac is.
Oh yes.
2099.
He's gonna.
No, but for me, Miles Morales, I mean, you guys kind of hit the nail on the head already, but the whole, representation game is more than just having a person of color on the screen. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that we need multiple. You know what I mean? Yes, we need the Luke Cage style. Yeah, it's a little on the nose.
Big time.
If you ask me, I feel like the live action Black Lightning show is far worse.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to watch, man.
I didn't even watch it. I saw the trailer and I was like,
don't do it.
I tried to, but I was like, I that's the one where I feel like most of the writing room can't be black. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe they are, but they're all like in their 60s.
No, there's no black people. There's no black people in those writing rooms, man.
No, not at all.
Not even 60-year-old black dudes would write that stuff, man. It's bad.
But I ask me, Miles, it's part of who he is, right? And it guides his actions and his thoughts because it's woven into his core of a being, but it's not what defines him, and that's what makes it so natural. And we need to keep, because there's multiple different types of people, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
We just need to, like, listening to Childish Gambino's Camp album was like listening to my own life.
Yeah.
And like I identified so much with that because it's just like being a nerd and being a goofball and doing all this stuff, skateboarding around. One of my earliest memories is, no, it's not an early memory, but I remember I used to skateboard a lot when I was a teenager. I'm skateboarding in front of my house, and this old Suburban like rolls by really slowly, and the window rolls down, and it's this old black dude, and he starts saying, "Skateboarding's for white boys." And I'm like,
okay.
What? Skateboarding's for white boys.
All right.
But why? You know what I mean? And like, so that's why I feel this is perfect, because it's that. It's yes, this is part of who I am, but it is not who I am.
Right.
So that's why I love the character so much. But um yeah, we can go ahead and start wrapping up. I'm sorry for taking your guys this whole evening. I was
Oh,
just
man.
stoked.
We could
to
talk
enjoy
Spider-Man
this,
for
but-
days.
Yeah, this was
For
fun.
real, man. This was fun.
Great.
This was really fun. We gotta do this.
I just worried about my wife. I told her to like take my daughter into her bedroom and keep her hostage for these 2 hours. So I'm like, I feel bad. But I'm like, don't interrupt our Spider-Man talk.
let's let's go around and give any of your favorite Easter eggs or cameos, or there's so many cool stuff in like the random posters in the background of Times Square and all
Yeah, that
this
could be a
stuff.
whole episode on its own.
That's a whole episode on its own.
But
I just did a whole series on it.
yeah, I mean, so give me your favorite ones, and then also let everyone know where we can find you. And I started with Zeph last time, I believe. So Juju.
Yeah, so my favorite Easter egg was just like it almost goes hand in hand with the computer panel that shows you the different universes. But my favorite Easter egg is like it's a smaller one, and it's basically like when the first Peter Parker is telling his story and he like swings by a Coca-Cola sign, and it's the correct Coca-Cola because like it's the 616 universe, very much like kind of based on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But then like when he goes to Miles's universe and it's Coca Soda. So like it kind of it tips you off to like this is like the 616 like original like Peter Parker versus like the one that's in this strange universe. So where you can find me is Straw Hat Goofy. That's straw_hat_goofy on TikTok and Instagram. I'm Straw Hat Movies. Same thing. It's a weird thing. Just go on my TikTok and hit the link and it will take you there.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And that also, there's like a Snapchat one, but it says Peekaboo.
Peekaboo?
Yeah.
Apparently that was like their original name or something, right? Was it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I
That's
was
what
like,
they
that's
originally
a better
called
name.
before they changed to Snapchat. I think that was the name they were going with.
That's hilarious.
That's funny. It makes the ghost make sense.
Yeah. How about you, Lex?
So my favorite Easter egg that just I knew what I was getting with this movie when this happened is the phone contacts, which I know everybody noticed that. You had Brian Michael Bendis in there and Sarah Bocelli, which are the guy and gal that created Miles. But you also had Dan Slott in there. He's the one that wrote Spider-Verse. And you had an author named Jason Reynolds. He's in there. He wrote the novel Miles Morales Spider-Man. So to have all of those different layers of those characters in that one scene, it blew me away. So that's my favorite and long list of favorite Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Everyone. And as far
Can't
as
choose one.
is Wednesday Poll everywhere. Our podcast is the Wednesday Poll list. We're on all major podcast networks. So check us out.
Awesome. I love it. And how about you, Zeph?
All right, favorite Easter eggs. Well, I'd say the phone too. The one in particular is when I think it was, I wasn't sure whose phone it was. I don't think it was Miles, but you see Todd McFarlane's name.
Yes,
because he's my all-time favorite Spider-Man artist. I love how he drew Spider-Man.
it's great.
Venom, Spawn.
Venom, yeah.
Venom Spawn, I love his artwork. And then the other one was the art when Uncle Aaron is chilling on his couch and he looks at the picture of him and his brother on the phone. That artwork behind him is almost kind of like teasing he was going to be the because you could see the way the artwork looked, you couldn't tell at first glance, but if you look at the letters, it kind of sort of like spells out proud. And I thought that was really cool. That was really dope. But and you can find me at Zeffy._ on TikTok, and just Zeffy for the YouTube for my gaming channel, and then on Twitter and Instagram it's just Zeph Titus.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Just to throw a couple out of there is a poster for a movie From Dusk Till Dawn, which was
yes
a Shaun of the Dead sequel with vampires that never got made.
That's awesome.
The fact that Blake Griffin plays for the New York Red Sox.
Yeah.
That's a poster. Steph Curry
Steph
is
Curry's
a golfer.
Yep.
A lot of 42 imagery for Jackie Robinson.
Yep.
But my favorite one is the brief shot where he's watching Community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which it's so freaking layered because like the character creation I really feel did get started from
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover.
Glover.
I'm only thinking Game Bean.
They based Miles Morales off of Donald Glover.
Yeah.
So the comic book characters based off of Donald Glover, who played Miles Morales in Ultimate Spider-Man. He was the voice actor for him,
Yep.
but then played Uncle Aaron in the Spider-Man film.
Homecoming.
Which he references that, as well as in that film, his license plate was a reference to the first comic run, and it just like it ties around so well. And also, this is kind of weird, but do you think when Miles Morales was just getting his powers, he's sticking to the outside of the building? Was that a This Is America reference? Because he's got the brown pants, he's got just the tie.
Oh my God! What?
Did not.
Yo, I'm looking up the picture right now. You're right.
Now it's hard not to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I was thinking today. I was like, this. So yeah.
I'm putting that in my next video.
But yeah, it's so deeply woven in. I love it. And thank all you guys so much for coming out and talking to me. This was awesome. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
Let's
do it
Thank you
again.
for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for having us, man. This was awesome.
And next time we get some cool nerd stuff coming on, I'll reach out. We gotta do this again. But until then, thanks so much. And I
Marvel and Star Wars are doing a lot of shit, man. There's a lot to talk about in the next coming months.
Oh Jesus, yes. But all right, guys, I'll let you have your evenings back. Have a good one.
All right.
Have a good one, man.
All right, guys. Y'all take care.
All right, y'all.